Well, hey everyone, I'm so happy you're here as we close out our series on integrity called BeForReal. For this last week, we're going to talk about something that may feel a little awkward to discuss at church, or anywhere for that matter. But I know you're all mature enough and ready to handle this kind of conversation. So today, we're talking about how to practice sexual integrity. Now, we're probably all coming into this conversation with different thoughts about the topic. Some of us may be curious to know more, some may be totally embarrassed. Some of us might feel strong emotions about this topic, and others may think it doesn't apply to them. But stick with me, because I think this is a conversation that we can all learn from, especially with all the mixed messages we get about this topic. I think we get a lot of different opinions about sexual integrity, mainly because our phones and tablets and computers give us unlimited access to all kinds of information. I mean, there was a day when the only place you could access a quarter of the information that we have now was a public library. And here's the thing, just because we have access to more information doesn't always mean it's the most helpful or the most accurate. With more information comes a lot more competing messages about what is actually true. For example, in 2017, when Fortnite first came out, it left the video gamer community in a frenzy because reports were dropping that this new game was anywhere from a mindless and boring game to this is the best battle royale game on the market. And these conflicting reviews ultimately left users in a place to determine for themselves what was true. Another example is when we find ourselves on social media or YouTube. We see influencers constantly push certain styles, diets, or life hacks saying that these are the most beneficial for us, while the very next video could be a different influencer saying the exact opposite. And these are just some of the simpler examples. While having access to all this information can be great and exciting and even beneficial in a lot of ways, it can also be much more difficult to figure out what is really true when we're constantly being exposed to conflicting messages and opinions. Day after day, we find ourselves being hit with competing information on difficult topics like politics and social media trends, historical events, environmental issues, and especially sex. And with all these conflicting messages, how are we supposed to figure out how to navigate it all? Everyone has a certain perspective on the topic of sex, but let's take a moment to break down two perspectives in particular: society and the church. Both of these have a lot to say on this subject. When it comes to society, messages on sex sometimes look like this: sex isn't that big of a deal, or sex is just something to joke about with your friends, or maybe sex will make the person you have a crush on like you more, or sex is just something that's talked about in an awkward health class. Then the church comes along and has typically shared messages like this: just don't do it. Don't think about doing it, don't even get close to doing it. Or sex is bad or harmful or something to be ashamed about. Or if you do find yourself in a situation where you crossed a line, you'll be in big trouble. This is difficult and it's frustrating to navigate. We're being bombarded with dramatically different messages that often leave us trying to figure out what's true. Remember, in this series, we're talking all about having integrity. Integrity equals authenticity plus good character. It's choosing to follow God's best and do the right things. It's following Jesus' example. It's honoring ourselves and other people. It's also an idea that applies to sex. Now, before we go any further, I just want to say, I know that this is a sensitive topic and some of you have been really hurt by a sexual experience and maybe even by a person who is supposed to be a trusted person in your life. If that's you, please know that there are people who love you and that most importantly, God loves you. God sees your hurt. You are not to blame for their actions. And please know that your integrity has not been compromised. So, how do we apply the idea of integrity to the topic of sex? Well, we can start by taking a look at a letter called 1 Corinthians. It's written by a guy named Paul, who's mentioned a lot in the New Testament of our Bibles. Paul was one of the most influential Christian leaders ever, and he started a bunch of churches a couple thousand years ago and wrote letters to help them learn what it means to follow Jesus. In fact, in this letter, he wrote specifically on the topic of sexual integrity. some people in the church there were having sexual relationships that were not appropriate, and their actions were causing a lot of harm. It was breaking families and hurting people. But some of the people acting this way said their sexual activity didn't matter, and they had the right to do whatever they wanted. They thought that what they personally did with their bodies didn't matter. So here's what Paul wrote to address this. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. This may be a little confusing. Bodies are temples? What does that mean? Well, remember, Paul was writing to people who lived 2,000 years ago. He compared their bodies to a temple because it was a comparison they would understand. Throughout history, temples have been built as sacred and holy spaces for people. They were where people would go to experience and focus on God. And another way to say this is that they're special and important places. So, telling someone their body was a temple was a perspective shift for the early Christians, because they no longer needed to go into a temple to be close to God. Instead, they were the temple, meaning that their bodies had value and were important to God. Paul told the Corinthians that just like they believed temples were holy and special places, they should view their own bodies the same way. To God, everything about us matters and has value, including our bodies. And since sex is something that has a lot to do with the way we treat our bodies and other people's bodies, that means it's an important thing to think about. That's why it's also so important to remember that no one has the right to touch you and your body without your permission, because you matter. Integrity in every area of your life matters. And this includes everything about us, including our choices when it comes to sexual integrity. Sexual integrity is choosing to respond to sexual desires we feel, think, or experience in a way that honors ourselves, others, and God. This can be hard to understand because it definitely conflicts with many of the messages that society tends to throw our way when it comes to sex. Like the people in the Corinthian church, we can believe that sex doesn't matter that much and is something casual. But here's the thing, sex was created to be good, but it was also created to be really powerful. Let me explain. Sex can create life, which is a really big deal and a really good thing. And it can bond couples closer together and make relationships stronger, which is a powerful thing. But on the flip side, sex can also lead us to make decisions that we don't fully think through and lead to consequences God doesn't want for us. If not taken seriously and used as God intended, sex can lead to broken relationships, hurt feelings, unintended physical consequences, and in some cases, abuse. The good news is that no matter what your experience has been, there is hope, and you have the power to choose sexual integrity. This is why choosing sexual integrity is so important, because when you value sexual integrity in your life, it means you are guarding your potential for intimacy through appropriate boundaries and mutual respect. If we are to consider our bodies as temples, sexual integrity is important because we have value and others have value as well. You are worth having boundaries and worth people respecting them. Because other people have value, their boundaries are important and worth respecting. You are worth having a healthy relationship that revolves around love and mutual respect. And others deserve to be in a healthy, loving, respectful relationship as well. Now, let's be extremely clear. Sexual activity doesn't change your worth. Nothing you have done or has been done to you can change how much you matter to God and how worthy you are of love and healthy relationships. But we do believe that sexual integrity is worth it because you are worth it. And because you matter, integrity in every area of your life matters. Okay, take a deep breath and let's break down this question. How do we live with integrity every day? Here are a few ways that you can live this out. First, choose integrity in every area of your life. Remember that integrity equals authenticity plus good character. This means we live true to what we believe and do our best to make wise choices. So, when we choose to live with integrity, we choose to live for what matters most. This applies to everything, including our relationships and sex. It means we choose to respond to sexual desires we feel, think, or experience in a way that honors ourselves, others, and God. Second, commit to sexual integrity. You don't have to wait until you're older to choose sexual integrity. You can begin making this a priority right now because middle school is a great time to commit to sexual integrity. This can be done in so many areas: in what you watch, how you act, the way you treat others, the boundaries you create and the boundaries you honor in others, the jokes you make, the comments you leave on social media, and how you think about others. And choosing to stay true to who you are shows real emotional maturity. And lastly, remember that integrity is always a choice. No matter what, it's never too late to choose sexual integrity. If there's anything that you remember, let it be this: no matter what life has looked like before now, you can always make the choice to live with integrity in all of your life, including sexual integrity. In fact, if this is something you need to talk more about, I want to encourage you to talk to a trusted adult, like a small group leader, who can help you make choices that align with God's best. People like your small group leaders can be safe to talk to about anything. As awkward as this topic might be to some of us, your small group should still be a safe place to talk about what it means to live with integrity in every area of your life. If you've experienced something like abuse, I also want to encourage you to talk to someone like a professional counselor. If you need help with this, please just let your small group leader know and they can help you take the next steps. Remember, God cares about our bodies and how we treat them. God also cares about how others treat our bodies too. That's why sexual integrity is an important part of valuing yourself and other people. And because you matter, integrity in every area of your life matters. You can be a person of integrity. The best part is that God helps us live this out. God gives us the support of other people and the example of Jesus to model our lives after. When we live with integrity, we wind up becoming more like Jesus. So, when you head to group, think about your response to this question. What is one step you can take to live with integrity in every area of your life?